Gold Shields brings true stories from law enforcement, the military, true crime authors, and first responders. Experience the dedication, danger, and emotional toll with the heroes themselves. These gripping tales of true crimes, true stories, and true heroes are all here on Gold Shields.
Welcome back to Gold Shields, the first episode of Season 2. I'm Dan Murphy, along with my partner in crime, Tom Smith. Every week we bring you the most compelling stories from law enforcement, from those who support it, and from those who chronicle the great work and interesting cases that are done. Today we have a guest that is absolutely off the charts. We are so excited about it. We have leaked it in our previews, but I'm going to let Tom introduce her. Before that, we want to tell you about some of our friends that are out there. First of all, you may notice me on the show. I'm always drinking Bone Frog coffee. Why? Because I need a boost? No, because I love the flavor. Bone Frog coffee is unbelievable. Tim Cruikshank, retired Navy SEAL, has a mission in life now. His mission is to not just bring great coffee, but to give back to the SEAL community. And he does that via Bone Frog. bonefrog.com/goldshields. Get a discount on their already affordable, incredible coffee that they source from South and Central America. Bone Frog coffee. Tom, what else do you want to talk about today? Welcome back. Welcome to 2024, brother.
Yeah, Season 2. Who would have thunk it? Last year, this time, us trying to figure out what the hell we were going to do.
Yeah.
And we said this, and we said this on our live Instagram show. We had 7 shows lined up, and then we had no idea what we were going to do after that. And then here we are on our 52nd show and Season 2.
Unbelievable.
I mean, we're blessed. We're happy. We're thrilled. Just getting back to Bone Frog real quick. I talked to Timmy last night, and they had a great holiday season with the push that we helped out with their boxes and their gift cards and everything. So the holiday was great, and we're so fortunate to have a company like Bone Frog Coffee in our corner, sponsoring us and supporting us. Well, I don't know if we could come up with somebody better to start Season 2. And you know what, Dan? I was sitting around, and I'm like, all right, how do we introduce this legend? How do you introduce a legend? How do you do that?
And I'm like,
you know what? It's Aphrodite Jones. That's it. It's Aphrodite Jones, who everyone knows and everyone coming into this knows. And, 25 years of doing this, investigative reporter, best-selling, award-winning author of, it would take 2 hours to name everything she's done. But we are just honored beyond words to start Season 2 off with such a great woman in the world of true crime, Aphrodite Jones. AJ, how you doing?
I'm good. Thank you for that legendary intro. I don't know if I deserve that.
No,
but
you do.
Okay, I'll take
your
it.
name is synonymous with this
it.
whole genre, and you are not somebody who takes something you're looking into on face value. You are somebody who digs. You're somebody who asks the right questions, who gets the right information, and we respect that immensely as former detectives. And you're somebody who we are so privileged to be talking to today. And the stuff you work on is fascinating. So we can't wait to dive into that stuff.
Well, I have to tell you guys, by the way, I'm very proud to be on your show. I love what you're doing. And, I think the police continue to get this bizarre rap out there by the woke. And I'm sorry, but I am just absolutely outraged by it. As I'm sure anybody in this, I know all of my friends in law enforcement are. But the question is, are people going to start resigning? I know that some people have started resigning early, that there's early retirement, da-da-da. I mean, we're really destroying, we're creating more chaos in our society because of this. And anything I could do to support law enforcement, man, I'm there.
And that's great. And that's what we need, and that was the basis of Dan and I doing the show. We've talked about it all last year. We'll talk about it this year. What was going on with the view of law enforcement in the country had to change. And if we could do a show highlighting the work that no one knows about, no one hears about, no one sees, that's what we're going to do. And the incredible work that's out there that needs to get out there even more. And when we have people like you in our corner supporting it, it gets better, and I don't think this is going to last forever. I think it's going to go back to a respect level. I'm hoping.
It has to.
It
has
has
to.
I agree.
There's
Because
no two ways about it.
it's unsustainable. And at some point, everyone wakes up and goes, oh, yeah, we need the police.
Well, the mayor of Philadelphia, I think the other day, made an announcement. She wants law and order.
Yeah.
She wants police. Hello. How did you ever get rid of
Yeah.
police? What were you
Tom
thinking?
and I are both
Right.
kids of the city from New York City. We both grew up in New York City, and I remember being a kid in the late 60s and the 70s, and then becoming a police officer in the 80s, and seeing what New York City had disintegrated into, and it was literally out of control. And watching it come back, and now watching it, I don't live there anymore, but watching it sort of from afar go down that slippery slope again. It all has to do with leadership. It all has to do with attitude, and it has to do with perception. And if you're perceived,
And you think with having a mayor who was former law enforcement, that things would have changed drastically. That's what we thought, because I'm in New York, and that hasn't been the case.
No,
We hope
not
it
at
is.
all. And you hope and you keep your fingers crossed that it changes, and then we get a sense of order again, and people can go back on the street and start running through Central Park again and walking through Times Square, because it is, listen, I've had the fortune of traveling around the world, and there is still no place like New York. There's not.
No, there's no place like New York. And I have to say, just before we get into my crime life of crime, is that I also lived through New York. Son of Sam, I grew up with that. Lived through Manhattan. When I was a kid, Broadway was peep shows and hookers and scary. And, I lived in Manhattan, and I, was being whistled at by construction workers. I know people were getting raped, just all of the horrors of New York City. And then that was 70s and 80s. And then Giuliani, came in, cleaned it up, really changed the face of New York. And one thing I will say, even though there's all this, looting and crime, etc., in other cities, I don't see it as much in Manhattan anymore,
Right.
honestly. And also, I do go in, and I've taken the kids to Times Square, and it's been fine. And, with the holidays, I was there. It's not like it's made out to be necessarily in the news. That's all I'm saying. There's an overemphasis on the negative. And of course, the news makes
I
ratings
would agree. I
bad.
mean, Tom and I still know plenty of people who are still in the NYPD at various levels within the department, and there's still great people there, and they are really trying to deal with a tidal wave of negative perception, defunding issues, having to get creative and do things in different ways, and they are, and it's in good hands, and we feel good about that because we know that there's great people there, and when the city's leadership decides to do certain things, the department's ready. And individually, one-on-one, there's still people I respect immensely and always will.
Oh, no doubt. No doubt.
No doubt. So let's get into Aphrodite Jones. You have shows, but we want to get how, why, how did you become what you became, and why? What was the draw with what you delved into?
Okay, so a couple of things. First and foremost, I was a writer. I'm a writer. And I was a journalist prior to writing books. And what I was doing was chronicling the evolution of cable television. I didn't have any idea I was going to be involved in crime. That was the last thing I thought in the world. I wanted to be a movie star out in Hollywood, and that's where I was. And it was all great. And the Disney Channel launched, and the Playboy Channel launched, and I was there for all of it, and MTV, and you name it. But anyway, I wound up in Appalachia as a professor. I did a PhD program at NYU. I was completing the dissertation, and I went to Appalachia to teach full time. And whilst there, I was also doing radio broadcasting because, again, I've always wanted to be in that field, whether it's television, broadcasting, radio, whatever. And while I was reporting on the radio, an FBI agent killed his informant lover. And she was a hillbilly mountain woman, and nobody paid attention to it. And I'm like, where's the news? Where's CNN? What's going on here? This is 1989. What's happening here? How can this not be in the news? This is the only FBI agent in the history of the FBI, before and since, that has ever pled guilty to murder, cupping, and manslaughter plea. Name was Mark Putnam. So when it happened, I had already written a book about Hollywood, which was out with agents in Manhattan. And so I contacted one of the agents. I said, what about this? What about this story? And he said, well, Ann Rule will probably do it. I said, didn't say Ann Rule. I was so far away from crime at that point. I had finished the PhD program at NYU. Anything like true crime was considered trash by the elitists over there in the ivory tower of NYU. And so, okay, Truman Capote, let me read it in cold blood. I read it. Who knows what you don't know when you don't know it in my 20s, that I could do this. I wrote a proposal. It got sold. I wrote the book. It became a TV movie with Patricia Arquette playing the victim, Susan Daniel Smith. Steven Weber played the FBI agent. It ran for years. It was a MLW, Movie of the Week at the time on ABC. Then went to Lifetime. As that was happening, my next book project came along, and that was the book that became Cruel Sacrifice. And that's a story about 4 teenage girls who murdered a 12-year-old girl in a lesbian love ring, which is completely insane. You can't touch that book without being absolutely shaken to your core, especially the first part of it. It's so drastic and just unthinkable. That book became a New York Times bestseller. I then said goodbye to NYU and their dissertation. Bye-bye. I don't need you anymore. I really don't want to be Dr. Jones. I'll just be me. And so once that happened, though, I was stuck with the genre of true crime. I kind of wanted to get out of it because that story just shook me to my core, writing it. And I wanted to get out of it, and the publishing world was not having it. So I wound up getting contacted by the friends of Tina Brandon, who became Brandon Tina, which was the first transgender murder chronicled in America, which I wrote the book on, called All She Wanted, now called All He Wanted. There was no such word as transgender, guys, at that time in 1993 when that happened. It didn't exist, not in this country. I've looked it up. It did exist in Europe here and there, but I saw somebody with a t-shirt on that said transgender menace. I was interviewing the person. I said, what's transgender? I knew transgendered. And that's how this person, who it goes from male to female, back to male to female, throughout the story, was I described as transgendered because that's all there was. Interestingly enough, the transgender community can't stand me because I gave a speech at one of their early rallies about who they are and how transgender people need to be recognized, and no one can have boy or girl on their licenses and passports, and nobody should wear pink or blue. And I was not thrilled with the mentality, thinking that basically it's all about them and everybody else doesn't count. And so I went into, this was a triple homicide that I was covering. I was covering it in court. And the reason that Brandon Tina, really Tina Brandon legally, was killed was because they raped her. These two guys raped her as a her. And she went to the police and the sheriff and reported it. So he became she again, all right, because she wanted to report that crime. And they said, if you report it, we're going to kill you, which they did. But they also killed 2 other innocent people in the process. It was a triple homicide. So I made the mistake of saying this wasn't just about Tina Brandon Tina. This was about a triple homicide that they were prosecuted for. Well, they basically took the hook and pulled me off the stage. If they had tomatoes, they would have thrown them at me. And since that time, guys, I have never been acknowledged for having written the book that is the only book about a transgender murder that started this whole movement in America.
Wow.
Yes.
And Hilary Swank plays that character in the Hollywood film about it. And
Exactly. And my book was the basis for that film on Boys Don't Cry. However, I had to sue the studio because they took it out from under me, even though I had the life rights to the main characters, et cetera, and they settled with me. And they settled with Diane Keaton, who was producing the film, and Drew Barrymore, who was slated to star in the film. So it was a whole thing in the backdrop there. And I just wonder, why it is still to this day, all these 30 years later, whatever it is, 30 years, why it is that, I just never have had any acknowledgement. I know they didn't like me. I know they didn't like that I said it's about more than one person. No, it was only about their cause. Okay. But what about what I wrote? What about the movie Boys Don't Cry that presents branded Tina as lesbianish.
Yeah.
They didn't get it right either back then. So I don't know. Strange world, strange times.
Well, you're certainly ahead of your time, that's for sure. But it's amazing when, you dive into something and this doesn't happen, AJ. When people write books and so on and so forth, the immediate success isn't the normal route.
The immediate success that you saw
just hit
is
it right
uncommon.
and just led to one after another after another.
Well, all I can say is I am a perfectionist with my craft. I am absolutely determined. I am, relentless with what I do. I mean, I just finished a book, came out late last year, called Levi's Eyes. I spent 4 years documenting the most heinous crime committed by a man. He killed his first wife in a fire and killed his biological son by dropping a 3-ton farm truck on his son, crushing him and leaving him there to die. He almost got away with all of it. And the funny thing about that story is, his name was Carl Carlson, still writes to me. I haven't answered him in 2 years. I don't know. But that people, we've done this story. I did it on my show. 2020's done it. I've been on that show with it. Dateline's done. All these shows have done that particular story. And yet, my book is selling like crazy. And why? Because I have more. There is more. And in that case, I had something that I've never had before. And that was unfettered access to the killer. So I spoke to this man, Carl Carlson, from his jail cell as he awaited trial. Now, do you know of any person that's awaiting a murder trial that would talk to media or an author prior to the
Nobody
trial?
who's got a lawyer.
No.
Who knows how to talk to them? Yeah.
Exactly.
Anybody who's smart. Right.
So he's crazy, man. He's talking to me before the trial, during the trial, after the trial. And when COVID hit, he never got shipped back to New York, where he had to serve his initial sentence for killing his son that he pled guilty to. So he was out in California, found guilty first-degree murder out there, and was stuck in that jail in Calaveras County for another 9 months. So I had an extra year talking to this man 5 days a week on tape. And the stuff coming out of his mouth is not to be believed. And that is why a lot of people who read that book say to me, I had to keep looking back to make sure this was actually a real story. Couldn't believe it. Yeah. So, yeah, I'm fortunate. But again, the amount of effort I put into that, 2 years of transcriptions of all my conversations with him, mixing that in with 3,000 pages of documents, court transcripts, police reports, all of it. This is what I do. And to then weave it into a story that seems like a novel, it's time consuming. It's a whole thing. It's very, I don't know how to explain it. I go into a zone that I really can't even recognize myself, honestly. Yeah, I'm a different person when I'm writing. My time ends. I don't know what people think I'm very flighty. And I am, because I'm living in my books while I'm writing. I'm walking around. I don't know which way am I headed. Okay, whatever. Here, let's turn over.
You have no idea how much you have in
crazy.
common with the gentleman on the other screen. When it comes to working a case,
Is that
I
right?
never saw anybody so laser-like focused on the outcome or getting the bad guy or getting the evidence or a combination of the above. Never saw anybody so like, hey, Tom, it's midnight. You might want to eat something.
That's definitely something we have in common. And I have to say, the most successful people in this world are the ones who are laser focused. And I tell kids all the time these days, why are you trying to listen to songs while you're doing homework, while you've got earbuds and you're online and you're watching your phone, you're not watching the movie. What are you doing? You can't ingest all of that information at once. It's all diluted. And then you've got basically a hodgepodge.
That is so
of
well
really
said and
nothing.
so true. Human beings, as much as we think we can multitask, what happens is we end up giving very small periods of time to different things, and we think we did it all at the same time. We didn't. Our brain doesn't work that way.
Yeah. Yeah. And I will say just one last thing about Levi's eyes that's important in terms of investigators and the dedication to the field and to what they do. The chief fire investigator of the house that burned down in Murphy's, California in 1991 on New Year's Day, he was investigating this, and they didn't have enough money in that small county there to let him go to New York. The killer, Carl Carlson, had flown already back to New York with his kids that he saved down in the fire. So he comes back a hero. I saved my kids. I couldn't save my wife. He starts a whole new life with a new wife, etc. And because they didn't pursue the case any further, they closed the case. It was just, that's it. It was an accidental fire, paid out, insurance payout. The fire investigator, Carl Kent, when he retired, he held on to all those records for years. And when he retired, he knew that at some point that Cal Fire would destroy records, because after 7 or 10 years, they do that. And so he took them all home with him. And wouldn't you know, the day came and I watched him at trial he said, "Why'd you keep those files?" I said, "Well, I just thought there might be a date." Objection. Yeah, he knew he had it, and he had tapes, videotapes, audio tapes, all of it. And that's how this killer got caught.
That is awesome.
Because of one man's determination.
If you're going to do this job well, Tom and I know this, and anybody knows it, and I'm sure you know it, you have got to be dedicated and committed to a point of years later, you still remember the names and details of your cases. Innocuous cases, people think, oh, who cares about that? Well, it was my case. And when it was my case, it meant everything to me, and I was focused on it. And years later, Tom and I can talk, and we'll be like, hey, remember this one? Yeah, this was this. This guy did that. It was that time. Never forget it, because it means that much to you. You're so committed to it. And thank God for that one specific fire investigator's determination and just dogged desire to keep going, not quitting. I love it.
Right. Not letting it go. He wasn't going to let that go. And by the way, they did destroy the records because they moved to another facility. So he was right. And chain of command was kept in place because he put him in a locker in the basement of his house and never looked at him again.
Awesome. Awesome. So you've got so much stuff you've worked on. We talked a little bit before the episode today, didn't we, Tom? What did we kind of decide, or what we kind of decide with Aphrodite that was something that we really wanted to talk about? There's one specific case with a last name that seems to be synonymous with being a dirtbag. And I hate to say that to anybody who carries that name, but it's just...
But it's bizarre. It's just weird. 3 of the most prominent killers, in the last
20,
20, 30 years are Peterson. Like 3 of the most known cases out there. And it's weird because when you say one, you have to kind of go through your Rolodex of which one you're going to talk about.
The Peterson case. Which one is that?
But I think we came up with one, and I'd asked AJ when we spoke, is there a case out there that still, even to this day, kind of gives you a chill? Kind of like, you know what, that one sticks.
You froze on me.
Yep, sticks a little bit. And we did come up with one. And Aphrodite, I'm going to leave it to you. Let's get into this Michael Peterson case and the staircase, and we'll get into the owl.
Oh yeah,
that's for damn sure. But let's dive into this fascinating case.
So, the staircase on Netflix has become one of the biggest true crime series. It actually was the first long form series made by a documentarian. And so it was actually shown at film festivals initially many years ago, and it was done in 2004. And then it was updated in 2010 or 12. And then again in 2018, it came out on Netflix, and it's 13 hours. I wrote a book about that trial, Michael Peterson trial in Durham, North Carolina. His wife fell down the stairs of their mansion, and he found her. And at that trial, I felt certain that he would get convicted, but I could see that nobody was quite sure about it, not even the judge. it became apparent to me everybody was on pins and needles. It's interesting that he got convicted of first-degree murder of his wife by a jury. I was there. And then, after serving time in prison for 8 years plus, because of a technicality, because the blood expert of the state had misrepresented his CV and had misrepresented some of his testimony, more importantly, they declared a mistrial. He's let out an ankle bracelet, spends a couple of years on an ankle bracelet, is recording more of his TV show, which winds up on Netflix, with his whole team right there behind him and his kids behind him, everything wonderful. Michael Peterson, poor Michael Peterson, the victim of a tragic American justice system. This is what we portray in The Staircase. Now, if you read my book, A Perfect Husband, Mr. Perfect Michael Peterson, who had the perfect marriage, also had somebody else that fell down the stairs in his life. 16 years prior in the 1980s in Germany. And guess who's the only person
Michael
who found
Peterson.
her?
Michael.
Johnny on the spot. He's
That's
such a good
it.
husband. He's always there.
Well, that wasn't a
okay.
husband. That was a friend. It's interesting. A friend.
Quote.
She had put in her will that she wanted Michael and his then wife, his first wife, to be the guardians of her two girls. Should anything happen to her, and of course something happened to her, he collected the girls. And those two girls, Margaret and Martha Ratliff, are key figures in the documentary who absolutely believe in their father's innocence. And it is their belief that then lends itself to the belief throughout that Michael Peterson couldn't have done this, that he's innocent. And if you continue to watch the Netflix documentary, you will see that it seems like you're getting everything in real time. It seems like you're seeing all of it. Oh, it turns out he's bisexual. Who knew this? Oh, it turns out somebody else was down at a staircase in Germany. Oh, this, oh, that. But in essence, that filmmaker who's had the goal of making the American justice system bad, okay, that was his goal. And he accomplished it by telling just enough, but not putting in the most essential evidence, not putting in things that would condemn this man beyond belief. And so you have this thing where it's a whodunit. You see New York Times reviews of this thing. Who did it? And I want to emphasize the word who. Who?
Good.
And how does that
Good job.
roll in?
Good
We
job.
all
And-
know, but let's tell the audience what that references to.
Well, you guys go ahead. You mentioned it already.
Well, you know what? Before that, I just one quick thing. You know, when you watch the documentary and you see the kind of the video of the crime scene, where we as detectives have a way to look at things. You know, when you enter, there's certain things that jump out. There's certain things you look at, and two major things popped out when I watched the documentary and saw the video. The blood, the amount of blood that was there. I fell down the stairs before. My wife's fell down the stairs before, and you go, ow, and you get up. You know,
Right.
that's just kind of what it is. The point of how dry the blood was is troubling, because that doesn't
Not
dry
at all.
instantly. That takes a while. Right. That takes a while to happen. But one thing in particular that jumped out, and this is just, Dan, we talked about it in AJ. We actually had a brief conversation about it also. When you hear the 911 call and he goes through his script, and that's what I really believe it is. Heavy breathing, the panic, all this, because he has a certain script in mind. The first question the 911 operator asks him sends him into a tizzy. He's expecting, is she breathing? Is she this? Which he has all the answers to. And then the 911 operator throws in the question, how many stairs did you fall down? And you hear the difference in his voice go, what? Because he's not ready for that. That's not part of the script. He's standing there, apparently, if you believe him, he's standing over her body when he makes the call because he's talking about her either breathing or not breathing. All he's got to do is look up and tell you how many stairs there are. And he doesn't answer that question. And he does later. Oh, 15, 20 or something like that. But that really jumped out at me.
It does jump out. And what the other thing that jumps out is, if you get into the real details, he hung up on the emergency operator. He hung up on the dispatcher and then called back. So he got thrown off. So he hung the phone up. Now, the second time he makes the call, he, all of a sudden she went from she's breathing to she's not breathing. Well, which is it? So she was breathing. You're there. She just now stopped breathing. So he's got a different script that he's going with now on the second call. And just, the way he set that up is so similar to what happened in Germany. And he got away with it in Germany. And he really thought he was going to get away with that in Durham, North Carolina. There's no doubt in my mind.
People who do stuff like this who are not career criminals, but this guy obviously has a streak in him of whether it be narcissism, sociopathology, something is going on with him. He's not an accomplished person at it in terms of a whole lifestyle of doing it. So he's going to screw up. He's going to make mistakes under pressure. And even if he wanted her dead, as long as he could remember, he's still going to be excited and agitated at that moment, and he's not going to be thinking clearly. He's going to be, like Tom said, here's my script, I'm sticking to it, and as soon as you can knock him off that, and we took advantage of that as investigators. You sit down with somebody, I know this person is holding on to their story, but I also know right behind that veneer is a person who I can manipulate to get them to break down, to mess with their nerves, to work on it, and there's a whole psychology behind it. But this individual, when I watched him on that series, walking around the house and guiding them through, we were out here having wine, and then she went in. There's a way people talk as though they are creating the scenario or trying to remember the lie they told. And one of those things is the first time you interview somebody who was involved in something, it's in the past, obviously. I'm interviewing you now. Why are you speaking present tense about it? And
interesting. That's an interesting.
So they go to present tense because they're making it up on the fly. But he had already told a story. So as he's doing it, he's being very careful to make sure that whatever my final story was to the police, I have to make sure on camera here. So that takes some thought. He's going from he's compartmentalized my story in this room, my story in this room. And to me, as I'm watching it, forget about whatever bias I may have towards him. Just watching him, I see a man on edge, and not over the loss of his wife, but over, I have to keep this straight.
Yeah. Although you have to, if you watch the entirety of the series, which is quite long, it's 13 episodes, you will see that he gets very comfortable with his pipe and his smoking and his legal team that's all too arrogant. One of whom, David Rudolph, his mentor was Barry Scheck of OJ Simpson fame, who was helping Rudolph throughout the trial in the backdrop. I'm aware of that. So that he's, in his mind, he's got the number one team. He's got everything in his corner, and he's going to get out of this. And he did not do it. He did not do it. He bound her, and there's no evidence.
It was that pesky bird.
There's no evidence. It was that bird of prey.
Bird of prey. Bizarre.
Bizarre.
The other thing I got out of the show was how quick his emotions changed. The camera would go on and he'd play the wiping it, and then in 5 seconds he's laughing about something. It's a bizarre show to really, especially when you do what we do and you're used to talking to people and watching people and how they act and stuff, and you watch this and it's creepy and it.
Yeah, well, and if you happen to read the book, you will see a very different portrayal of this person. Going back to his days as a Marine in the Vietnam War and what all he was involved with there, writing these bizarre novels that are all about gay sex and twisted military action and just weirdness. And of course, he was bisexual and he was having dates with escorts, some of whom were military young men. He had a whole fascination with this. He wrote about it in his quote novels. And they were novels. I mean, he did okay with them. He never made the money he wanted to make. He thought it was going to be Tom Clancy. That didn't work out for him. But his bisexuality is something that his team played on by saying, in essence, these prosecutors, this whole prosecutorial team, including Dwayne Deaver, who later winds up being the expert who kind of muddied the waters with the blood evidence, that he really believed that and sold the idea that, hey, not only didn't I do this, but we have every reason to prove. I will prove my innocence. I will prove it. And one of the things they did is hit on the prosecutors and say, you are homophobic. And you see it in the Netflix series, and you see, I talk about it in the book. The only reason you're after him is because you're homophobes. He told me, I interviewed him in prison, by the way, Michael Peterson. He told me his wife knew about his bisexuality. She was all fine with it. And that because the people in the Bible Belt in southern Durham, North Carolina, couldn't tolerate gayness or bisexuality, this is why they went after him. That was one. And the other was, he had written a column for a number of years at the Durham paper. And as a columnist, he attacked the police for various things that they did or did not do with drug violence, gang violence, whatever. And he believed and sold to his minions that, the police were after him because he had attacked them publicly. So this was all, he was being framed.
Unbelievable.
And there are a lot of people out there who've watched this and believe
You
it.
say a lie enough, you say it with enough confidence, repeat it enough, people will filter it through their own biases and decide whether they want to believe it or not. And when you when you put the victim label on yourself, like he did, and you align yourself with a certain group, you win a percentage of the population.
But the other interesting thing about him, as creepy as you say he is, you have the benefit of 2020, right? Vision. The fact is, back in time, he's charismatic. And one of the people that he had convinced in terms of his minions was a state senator by the last name of Galifianakis. And I'll never forget because it's Greek. And I interviewed him, Nick Galifianakis. He's God passed. He rests his soul. Nice, lovely man. And he's the one who got me the interview with Michael Peterson in prison after he was in there, lost all his appeals. It was over. Bum. And the funny thing, Nick Galifianakis, who believed 100% that Michael Peterson was absolutely innocent, framed, and this is a person of government. He says to me at one point, I have a nephew who's going to be a movie star. He's out in Hollywood, of course. That Galifianakis. I mean,
that is funny.
You can't write this stuff, right?
Wow.
Yes. So what I'm saying to you is Michael sold his story to a lot of people. It wasn't just his kids or his first wife, who, by the way, flew in from Germany and sat there every day in the trial, supporting her husband. That was her ex-husband that cheated on her and left her. All of this. So, he charismatic.
Very true.
In real life, not so much when you're watching the documentary. You get this, you're right, it's an eerie feeling about him.
Eerie is a nice word for it. Creepy. Yeah,
weird.
There's other words, but we try to be, PG on this show as much as possible. But, a fascinating case. I haven't seen the entire. I've probably seen 3 or 4 episodes so far, and I have read a little bit of your book. I just got it the other day. And usually I'm a voracious reader. Tom knows that. But we have so many guests who have books, and my problem is I don't read 5 pages of a book. I read the whole thing. And I generally read 3 at a time.
I hear you.
So I always have 2 or 3 on my nightstand. It just, I love to read, and I love true stories. And I don't have time for fiction for some reason. The true.
Well, hopefully you'll like mine and you'll get a chance to read it because It's definitely one of my better ones,
Well,
and people love
I'm
that book.
sure I will enjoy it, and I'm looking forward to reading it. I'll probably start this evening. Um, so, Michael Peterson case, he has been convicted. He's ultimately found guilty after not a small amount of effort on behalf of the state and a great full court press from his attorneys. And that seems to be something we see commonly in high-profile cases, is these very high-profile, big-money attorneys coming to the defense and influencing juries, influencing courtrooms, influencing the media, influencing public opinion, and they have press conferences outside the courthouse every day. How much have you seen really sway, in your personal experiences, really sway juries and really sway communities? Because it seems to me it's very powerful.
It is powerful, and in this case, they did have somebody. They had a star, Dr. Henry Lee, who testified for the defense, who got up there and did the whole show about spitting ketchup onto a white placard, which he had done at the OJ Simpson trial, and he testified that there was, quote, too much blood for it to not have been from a fall. I don't know how Henry Lee came up with that, but he actually said it, and I'm in the courtroom going, well, what are you talking about? People were believing him. People were asking for his autographs in the elevator. Okay, obviously not the jury, but you could see that he was pulling people over to his side. But then what happened? Something interesting. The defense got so cocksure of themselves that they decided, we are going to take the jury on a little field trip to the mansion, the Peterson mansion. And we're going to go there and we're going to show them this staircase so they can see the amount of blood and how this happened. Well, that was the end of it. I interviewed jurors after the fact for my TV show, right? And they said, when we saw that staircase with all that blood, there's no question in our mind that he killed her. So, but here you have, he got twisted around because that dream team that he had, including Henry Lee, backfired. So the jury found him guilty. They truly found him guilty, life without parole. And then, of course, we have Dwayne Deaver, the blood expert on the state side, who had not only fortified his resume, but had done certain experiments that weren't kosher with the blood stain analysis and the stairway, etc. And he winds up, because in a prior case, he had testified in a murder case. Somebody was convicted and spent 14 years in prison, 17 years in prison for a crime that the only thing that linked him to a murder, a woman who was beaten to death, the only thing that linked this person to that murder was one spot of blood in the car. Well, Deaver got on the stand and said that that was human blood. Later, it turned out that the notes he wrote detailed that it was actually not human blood. And because of that, now comes David Rudolph. We need a new trial. This guy falsely testified. All this science is junk science. And this is why, strangely, and what we're dealing with now is a huge amount of people around the world who have seen not only the movie, not only the documentary, but also watched David Rudolph go all around the country with his and the world, presenting how crooked the American justice system is, presenting the theory about this owl, that they are believing that the American justice system was corruptly going after this man, Michael Peterson, and that he's innocent. I don't know. I don't know how does that happen?
You know what? In today's what's going on today, I'm sorry, Dan, to cut you off. You know, the kind of, like you mentioned in the beginning of the show, the woke atmosphere. They need like one crack in an armor, and they just dive in, and that's it. And then that gets filtered to these just social media platforms that these people listen to, and to be gospel. You know, and that's all they need is that little inch, and they just exploit it and rip it apart.
And so to that purpose, so I was covering the Scott Peterson trial when my book about Michael Peterson came out. So I had a couple of days in between, and I flew back to Durham, and I did a talk at Duke University with my book and yada yada. And after the talk, they had a very prim and proper reception for me with the little finger sandwiches, etc. And I had this beautiful room, and I'm there signing books. And a man comes up to me, and I don't really see him because my head's down signing, and he puts a talon on the table that I'm signing the books on. So what is it? I look up what there's this big owl talon. Okay.
Oh my God.
And this is the first anybody's ever heard it. So now he's telling me, an owl is what killed this woman. And I have proof of it. Look, I will show you. When he starts flipping through the pages of my book, you see that the scalp with Kathleen Peterson and the marks on her scalp. He says, see, they match the talon. Exactly. So I'm thinking, okay, you're not. Now I'm walking around the finger sandwiches, right? Signings part is over. I'm supposed to be, having a little mingling time. And this guy's following me. I can't get rid of him with a talon. I thought, okay, now I go back on the Scott Peterson thing. I come back to Durham to do a book signing. And there he is at the book signing again. I saw this is nuts. Okay, roll the tape forward. That nut, I wound up having to interview for my TV show many years later and have to sit there with a straight face while he's got mounted stuffed owls around his office. I swear to God. I swear to God, I am there having to keep the straightest face with this man because he is serious as a heart attack. And he's got the proof because now he's got microscopic owl feathers that were found in her hair. Here it is. He's showing me these microscopic images, with a whatever magnifying thing. I think of myself, okay, you know about down pillows that are filled with feathers? I sleep with down pillows. I happen to like feathers. That comes out in your hair through the pillowcase all the time. Like,
yeah.
What are you thinking here? It's an owl. It was the owl. It was an owl. But we have owls in this area. He lived next door to the Petersons. I know it. And we saw it. And I know it. And he's managed to convince, including filmmakers, that this is a real possibility.
They walk among us.
The reaction. Oh, yeah. When you watch the show and that part of the documentary and they interview people about the owl theory, the look on their face of utter, like, yeah, of course this is what happened. You just shake your head like, what do we say, right? There's a bridge down in Brooklyn for $3. You want it?
It's amazing what people want to believe. And I actually went to David Rudolph's, one of his talks he gave in New York area. I mean, they were actually paying for tickets to see this, along with the guy who defended the Making of a Murderer case. Okay, those two teamed up. So they were this crime team out there to show that the American justice system is corrupt and inadequate and all of the rest of it, just to destroy the American justice system as much as possible. Going to England and doing this. I got a call from a reporter in Durham years ago. Did you know they're in London, trashing the American justice system? I thought, oh my God. So I went to see it. And they asked everybody write a question, what have you like? Well, the questions for the guy from Making a Murderer were very short. And then the questions for David Rudolph was the same question. What about the owl? Everybody wanted to know about this owl. That's what they were there for. And so what do you think Rudolph does? He actually has a whole presentation ready because he's obviously faced this everywhere else he's gone. And he presents this whole videotape of an owl and which owl it is and the kind of owl. And actually, that never came into trial, obviously. When I asked the judge about it back when I had a sit with Larry Pollard, the owl man with the talon, when I was mortified and tried to keep a straight face. And I went to Judge Olander Hudson. I had interviewed him for that show. And I mentioned to him, and he looked at me like, you're kidding, right? Like, why are you even asking me about this? No. It did come into trial. It wasn't in the original documentary, The Staircase, because even Xavier de Lestrade, the guy who made it, knew that it seemed nuts. But then because of social pressure on social media, he had to address it, and he then added an episode with the owl. I don't understand why people want to think something like that that's the culprit that Can you even understand that? I'm trying to figure it out myself.
Armchair
Honestly.
detective.
And it goes against. Yeah, right. I was just gonna say
Armchair
that. I didn't hear-
detectives. Everybody
I didn't hear.
wants to put their little junior detective hat on, and if it sounds good, or if I like the way the person is saying it, or if somebody I know who believes it likes it, like for example, Making of a Murder, I watched that, and I didn't get to the very end of it because I was kind of disgusted, and so many people were saying it is so obvious this guy is innocent, and I watched it, and after a couple episodes, I was like, this guy did it. He absolutely did it.
Yeah.
And the only thing that they keep
He
showing him
absolutely-
talking, like sitting around with his mother going, I don't know, why are they blaming me? Like, I haven't seen any exculpatory evidence whatsoever. Everything about that case to me.
Right. Well, the only thing that happened there, and similar to actually the Peterson case, the Michael Peterson case, in that there was a blood expert who muddied the waters and did the unethical is what they called it, experiments. I don't know if they were unethical. I actually interviewed that man too, Dwayne Deeper. I think they were unethical. I think they were. He spent a lot of time because he was up against Dr. Henry Lee. And he spent a lot of time trying to figure out a styrofoam head coming downstairs. I saw the models that he created up the stairway. I mean, it was very complex what this man did. And don't get me wrong, he clearly is overzealous. And there are other cases where he testified wrongly. And he was ran out of town on a rail. But in this trial, in the Michael Peterson trial, he didn't do anything wrong. It was a technicality that allowed, for the mistrial, and then allowed everybody to say, oh, this is a corrupt justice system in America. But, I think that when you take that premise and you want to look at America that way, if we're so corrupt over here in America, guys, what are you going to say about, I don't know, China, or maybe Russia, or maybe let's go to Argentina, let's go to Venezuela.
Right.
We can pick out of a hat any number of countries around the world, including anything in Africa, whereas corruption abounds. We're the ones. Look at Oscar Pistorius. I covered that case. I was in South Africa. I met with the journalist who covered and wrote the book on it, and I was ready to do something about it, but unfortunately the cameras in New York were like, we're not going to South Africa. Okay. But that case at the time, he got off.
Yeah.
It was only because there was so much public pressure that they brought him back and he was found guilty. But there was overwhelming evidence that he did this. And there were phone calls and things that were left out of the original trial and the original case. Again, we're not talking about the justice like you get in America. We're talking about a different level.
I think we have the best system in the world based on my personal experiences of travel and study and things I've seen. It is an imperfect system because it involves human beings, and we are imperfect. There will always be decisions. There will always be biased juries or jurors who can sway a jury. There will always be an ineffective prosecution because they didn't know how to communicate to the jury. Or there will always be a variety of reasons why a case can go left or right. But by and large, overwhelmingly, you have the best shot at justice in this country that you do anywhere in the world. And I hate to see that tampered with. And I think there are times when there are judges who have acted grossly unprofessional. There have been many judicial decisions that I have seen either in public cases or my own that I haven't agreed with, although I'm not an attorney. But I would just think certain relevant evidence is being left out for a variety of reasons. And they have a lot of latitude. I mean, the judge is the judge. And you hope for the appellate process, right?
Well, I have to tell you though, guys, and I've been to a lot of trials, all right? Big ones, not just small ones, a lot of small ones too. I've done them for 30 years. But Bill Cosby, the retrial in Norristown, Pennsylvania, I went. Tom Mesereau was the attorney, and I covered Michael Jackson case. I wrote a book about it with Tom Mesereau as Jackson's attorney. And I have a relationship with him. I find him to be a very credible defense attorney. I knew in my heart, when I heard those women start to testify about what happened when they were younger with Bill Cosby, that he was going to go away. I felt absolutely certain, and it happened. There were other people speculating. No, it's not. No, he's going to walk. He's Bill Cosby, star qualities, all this. But he had testified in his deposition that he gave the drugs to the girl, and he had made that deal with the prosecutor that they can't use that, and then they took, it was a mess, but afterward. But the fact is, justice was served with Bill Cosby. Another one, justice was served with Phil Spector. Remember the first trial didn't happen. Come back. Was there for that too. And these women are coming forward to testify about how he brandished the weapon and threatened them the minute they started to leak. And the evidence piles up, and you realize this jury, I watch juries, that's my job. I'm seeing their reactions. I'm saying, they're going to convict him. This isn't going to be a slam dunk that these defense attorneys think. And sure enough, so Spector got his, Bill Cosby got his, Ghislaine Maxwell got hers, and I had people betting me. Oh, she's going to walk. They've got so much money, and Epstein and this, and it involves Bill Clinton and da-da-da-da. No, I was in that courtroom. I watched those women who she lured for Jeffrey Epstein testify. And I actually had to make a bet with somebody, a friend of mine, I live in Florida as well, in Florida, saying, that woman will never get found guilty. But the money she has and the connections she has, etc. I said, I'll bet you $100. Well, he had to FedEx me that $100.
All right, both of you, who in their right mind is betting Aphrodite Jones when it comes to something like, who the hell is putting that on the line? I mean, listen, we're going to get together when the NFL playoffs start. Me and you will talk. We'll get together. But when it comes to this, who's betting you? God.
I don't know. It's interesting. All the different perceptions that people have. And I'm happy to tell a story and make it a whodunit, an interesting story, because that is what people want, and that is the genre that I'm in. So when I say I'm happy to do that, I mean, it doesn't necessarily serve the victims' families, but it does in the sense that no one's going to pay attention to the story at all if there isn't an element of mystery, surprise. You can't have something that's a slam dunk. You can't have something that's all one-sided. No one's going to even look at it, pay attention to it. So you have to weave a narrative. You have to do this. As an author, as a television host, this is what I have to do. But my victims' families understand that because I have those conversations with them. So they know in the end it's going to come out in the wash. They know that I'm playing a titillation with the audience to get the hook in. And that's going to change. It's going to look good until it doesn't.
Great storytellers do
Wow.
that, and you are a great storyteller, but not a weaver of fiction. You're a great storyteller of real stuff that shows real human experiences and then filters it through the court system and sees what happens to that truth. And sometimes that truth marches on its way to the jury and makes it there. But a lot of times it gets diverted and it gets changed and added to, and the defense gets up there and throws all kinds of stuff up to make the jury think different things. And yeah, it's a very human thing, but you do an amazing job telling. I've seen so many of your shows, and you can find them still on TV. You're not currently making regular episodes of your show. I know that, right?
No, but my show, so it's True Crime with Aphrodite Jones. It was on ID for 6 seasons. I did 63 episodes of that, and it is on Hulu. It's on Amazon Prime. It's on all these streaming services. If anybody has a streaming service, you can easily find it. I particularly like the episode of Dinner on OJ Simpson, and because there's tape footage of him in there that no one's ever seen before. That's something special. That one, OJ, and of course, talk about defense attorneys throwing stuff against the wall. That glove that didn't fit, that glove was how many years old by the time the trial happened, or whatever the lead time between the murder and the trials was, a year, 2 years. I don't remember exactly, but those things shriveled up. It was covered in blood.
Covered in blood, sitting in a box,
And OJ did
wrapped
this with
in
his
plastic.
hand. You can see him
Right.
with his hand spread as far as he can do it, and he's trying to put. He said, "Doesn't fit, doesn't fit." I mean, come on. That whole thing was, yeah.
Yeah. It was contrived. And on top of which, he was told, don't take your any of your aspirin or Advil for your arthritis. Make sure your joints on your finger. And I know that from an insider who confessed it to me.
Wow.
Make sure that your hand is as swollen as possible. So if the glove don't fit, you must acquit. Apparently, that went
Well,
with
that's
the jury.
yeah.
Hey, Dan, I played a detective on TV and stayed at a Holiday Inn last night, but did we just
think
set
we
up
did.
like another show with
I
AJ?
think we did. She doesn't know it
I
yet.
think we just
Yeah.
hold on, let
Note
me
to
write
self.
that. Let me write that down.
OJ,
Yeah.
AJ.
OJ show, which you know what's funny though, we haven't done.
We haven't done that.
You
Barry
haven't done
Tellis did
OJ.
touch
No.
on it briefly,
Nope.
but we have
Okay.
not done a show on that, and it is a
Yep.
fascinating case, and your perspective will be invaluable. Our audience will love it, and I will love to hear your experiences covering that trial and
Oh,
knowing
God, yeah.
Mark Furman and people from the LAPD and the community as well as you do. Love to have you back.
Well, and I actually am involved in the Vegas end of things with the Goldmans. So I have that perspective much more so. But of course, I have the overall sense of it because I did cover it. Yeah. You know, you can never get tired of two things.
Yeah.
OJ Simpson and Casey Anthony.
You're
And,
right. You're right.
They're the two cases on the top of the wedding cake. You know, there they are. OJ, Casey, which one? You know, they both got away with murder.
You're right.
And they both were the most sensationalized cases. In fact, when I was in South Africa, it was to launch the ID channel there. And people were asking me not about the ID channel, not about anything, my show. The Casey Anthony trial just happened. So worldwide, even though it doesn't have, she didn't have the sensationalism of being an OJ Simpson, worldwide, people were astonished at the details and then even more astonished that she actually walked.
Yep.
That's an unbelievable case. It really is.
Well,
we're just going to have to get you a regular slot with us because we want to hear all these stories and stuff. You have so much experience, and we can't begin to thank you enough for today's discussion, and we hope it's just the first of many. And we know that
Well, thank you. I'd be my
we know that
pleasure
we'll
to
meet
come
you in
back with you
person
guys.
at an event
Oh,
where
that's
we've talked
happening.
about, and we're looking forward to that. But yeah,
Right, but CrimeCon. So we're all going to CrimeCon in Nashville this year. I'm very much looking forward to it. I'm actually going to be there to talk about A Perfect Husband, Michael Peterson, The Staircase. And I am bringing with me, hopefully, the lead detective. He's tired of all this 20 years of talking about it. But I am friends with him, and I think I can convince him. But also, I am bringing with me somebody who's never seen before, which is a witness to the scene in Germany.
wow.
Right. Yes. So I have an eyewitness that will be presenting with me. And I believe Art Holland will come through. And maybe not, but I hope he does. If he doesn't, it's more time for me because I got this story hands, no holds barred on this story. But yeah, I mean, Art was the lead detective on this thing. And he and the witness from Germany are fuming. Yesterday, Vanity Fair came out with the top shows to watch on Netflix. What do you think they were? One of them was The Staircase. That's yesterday, 2024.
It still keeps giving. Yeah, the gift that keeps on giving.
Right.
So tell us about what you have going
Amazing.
on. You have you mentioned your books. Please let your audience know what can they access that you've been working on, and tell us what you're up to.
Sure. So number one, as I mentioned before, my book, Levi's Eyes, A Son's Deadly Secret and a Father's Cruel Betrayal is out there. It is selling very well around the world, and it's Amazon. Just get on there. It's ebook, it's hardcover, it's softcover. I'm in the process now of beginning to put audiobooks, putting all my voice to the audio and narrating my book. So the first will be Levi's Eyes. I just created the sound list here in my office and getting ready to do that. And I have 8 more books besides Levi's Eyes to narrate. So that's probably taking a little time. Then there's the movie based on my book that is in percolation. We'll see. You know, I have had 3 of my books become movies. So that's another sort of issue that I have to actually make that happen or try to make it happen. It's pulling a rabbit out of a hat, really, with Hollywood. We'll see. And then at the same time, I mean, I'm percolating a new TV idea or streaming idea. Can't actually say what it is, but it's there in the background. And when I get through with Levi's Eyes, the audio, then I'll turn to it before I start doing all the other books, because that obviously is more pressing for me. And of course, I don't know, I might do a podcast if the TV thing doesn't work out. I don't know. There's so many podcasts and so little time. So I'm not so sure. As I've said before, so many murders, so little time.
And you're gonna do all that in your spare time because you just have all the time in the world to do 27 different projects.
And that's why we so appreciate your time today. We know how busy you are. And this has been an honor and a privilege for us, and just a joy to talk to you. But thank you. And we hope everybody buys your books. I know I have, and I will continue to, because I can't wait to read about Mr. Peterson. I'll start out with him, then Levi's Eyes, I'll go to that. But Tom and I, just so you know, are more than willing, and we'll make ourselves available to two things. One, have you on any time to update the audience on what you're doing and talk about other great cases that you've covered and that you have unique insight on. And secondly, we are willing to play the roles of detectives in any of your movies. Just saying.
You got it. You got it, guys.
We're happy to do that.
I love it.
Absolutely. And we can't wait for CrimeCon. Yeah, we got our feet
really
wet. We got our feet wet last year. We're kind of seeing where we fit with all that, and now we can't wait for next year.
I was there as a speaker for the inaugural CrimeCon, which was in Indianapolis in 2017. So here we are. It's 7 years later, and boom. So I'm really looking forward to it as well.
It's a blast.
Fantastic. Well, I'm going to echo Danny and just thank you so, so much for your time, for your insight, for your stories, and the work you do. It's one thing to have a passion, but then to do it at such a high level is something else. And you can tell.
You guys are two times. Thank you, Tom.
And you know what? The best part about it, though, AJ, is you watch you, and you're prideful in what you do. It's not just, I wrote a book. Yeah, it became a movie. You can see it in your face and in, your voice, how prideful you are in that.
In a good way.
And that makes it even better. That makes it
not
all
in an ego way.
Yeah, absolutely.
Look, this is my life's work. I have kids. I don't have kids. Okay. I got married very late in life. My life, my babies are my books. That is my life. Working with law enforcement, doing what I do has become my life. And you asked me in the beginning of the show, and I will wrap with this. You said, why did you get into this? Yes, I fell into it with the FBI killer, not my first book. But there's something else. I lost my parents when I was young. They died of heart attacks. They didn't die of a crime. But it doesn't matter when you're 17 and then by 21 you have no parents. The feeling is I'm been abandoned. I'm an orphan. What's going to happen? And that feeling of loss, utter loss that I carry with me to this day in my whole life is what allows me to not just sympathize, but empathize with victims. Because it doesn't matter, really. Of course, it matters if somebody's murdered. It's much more horrific. But at the end of the day, you lost your person. You lost your loved one, and they're not coming back. Even when you get justice, it doesn't serve you because you want your loved one back. And so I have that simpatico, if you will, and I think that translates into my career.
What an ending.
Well, thank you. Thank you.
So,
and
thank you again.
We will talk soon, I'm sure. And Tom, why don't you do what you do so well, which is take us out.
Well, we want to, again, thank AJ for her time and everything this show. And it was what we thought, what we wanted, what we hoped for with a premiere show of season 2. So thank you. And like we always do, say a prayer for all the law enforcement officers out there, all the military vets out there, because they do a thankless job and they do it for a bunch of strangers. And they go out there and do the job day in and day out and don't ask for anything in return. And the best thing that you could do for them is give them a wave on the street, pat them on the back in the store, and just make their day by saying thank you. It means the world to them. Trust me, because Dan and I have experienced it. And a thank you from someone is the best in the world. So make sure you do that. Keep them all in your prayers and their families. Because we've said the hardest thing in the world is cops and military families. So keep them all in your prayers. So for our premiere show of season 2. Aphrodite Jones, thank you so much. My partner, Dan Murphy. This is Tom Smith. Everyone stay safe and make sure you go to thegoldshieldshow.com. Get on YouTube, youtube.com/@goldshields. Hit that subscribe button. Hit the bell so you get all the notifications. We're also on Rumble and every conceivable audio channel out there. Your favorites, we're there. Hit the follow button. Don't miss an episode. Thank you all for joining us today, and we will see you all soon.